The rancher found the first mutilated cow 30 miles from Dulce. Its eyes were removed with surgical precision, the tongue was gone. The blood had been completely drained, yet there were no tracks around the carcass, not from predators, not from vehicles, nothing. The Jicarilla Apache police filed the report and forgot about it. Then more cattle started dying, always the same way, always near the mesa, always without explanation. By the time state investigators arrived, 23 animals were dead. The investigators left after 3 days. They submitted no report. They answered no questions, and the cattle kept dying. Northern New Mexico stretches empty and harsh between the Colorado border and Santa Fe. The high desert here averages 7,000 feet above sea level. Winters bring snow and isolation. Summers bring drought and lightning fires. Few people choose to live here. Those who do learn not to ask questions. The Jicarilla Apache Nation controls 880,000 acres around Dulce, their administrative center. The reservation sits on rough terrain. Mesas rise from valleys like ancient fortresses. Canyons cut deep into red sandstone. Underground rivers flow through limestone caves that have never been fully mapped. Dulce itself barely qualifies as a town. Population 2,743 at the last census. 1 gas station, 1 grocery store, a few scattered government buildings. Most residents work for the tribal government or the Bureau of Indian Affairs. There's little reason for outsiders to visit. No tourist attractions, no scenic overlooks marked on maps. Just endless miles of sagebrush and juniper. But underneath this forgotten corner of America, something else exists, or so the stories claim. The modern legend of Dulce Base began with Paul Bennewitz. An Albuquerque businessman and physicist, Bennewitz owned Thunder Scientific Corporation, which manufactured humidity measurement equipment. His company held contracts with Kirtland Air Force Base. In 1979, he started intercepting strange electronic signals near his home. The signals weren't random noise, they contained patterns, data bursts, encrypted communications. Bennewitz became obsessed with decoding them. He spent thousands of hours analyzing the transmissions. He bought advanced monitoring equipment. He photographed unusual lights over the Manzano Mountains. He documented everything meticulously. By 1980, Bennewitz believed he had uncovered evidence of an underground alien base near Dulce. He claimed the aliens were conducting genetic experiments on abducted humans. He said the US military knew about the base. Worse, they were cooperating with the extraterrestrials. Bennewitz compiled his findings into a report called Project Beta. He sent copies to military officials and UFO researchers. Most dismissed him as delusional. But Bennewitz had technical credentials. He had data, he had photographs. Some people started listening. The Air Force Office of Special Investigations took particular interest in Bennewitz, not because they believed his alien theories. They worried he might have detected classified military projects at Kirtland. Special Agent Richard Doty was assigned to investigate. What happened next remains disputed. Doty claims he tried to redirect Bennewitz away from sensitive military operations. Others say Doty deliberately fed Bennewitz disinformation to discredit him. Either way, Bennewitz's mental health deteriorated. He was hospitalized in 1988. He never fully recovered, but his story about Dulce Base had already spread. Thomas Costello emerged from nowhere in the mid-1980s. He claimed to be a former security officer at Dulce Base. His story was specific and detailed. The base had 7 levels, he said. Each level descended deeper underground. Level 1 was for security and communications. Level 2 housed human workers and laboratories. Level 3 stored nuclear weapons. Level 4 conducted mind control experiments. Level 5 housed alien living quarters. Level 6 was called Nightmare Hall. This was where humans and animals were kept in cages for genetic experiments. Level 7 was refrigerated storage for failed experiments. Castello described 3 different alien species working at the base. The Greys stood 4 feet tall, with large heads and black eyes. The reptilians were 7 feet tall and hostile to humans. The Nordics looked human but had pale skin and blonde hair. He said 18,000 Greys lived in the lower levels. The base connected to Los Alamos through underground tunnels. Magnetic levitation trains moved personnel between facilities. Castello claimed he escaped with photographs and videotapes. He called this evidence the Dulce Papers. He gave copies to several researchers before disappearing in 1988. No one has credibly claimed to see him since. The Dulce Papers contained technical drawings of the base layout. They showed genetic laboratories and alien housing areas. They included photographs of vats containing human body parts. There were transcripts of alien communications. Most researchers who examined the papers declared them obvious forgeries. The technical drawings contained basic errors. The photographs were blurry and inconclusive. The alien language looked like random symbols. But believers pointed out that Castello had nothing to gain from creating elaborate hoaxes. He never sought money or fame. He simply vanished. Phil Schneider brought new attention to Dulce in the 1990s. A self-described government geologist and engineer, Schneider claimed he helped build underground military bases. In 1979, he said, he was drilling at Dulce when his team broke into an existing underground chamber. They encountered Grey aliens. A firefight erupted. Schneider said 66 Secret Service agents died. He survived, but lost several fingers and suffered radiation burns. The incident was covered up. The government continued working with the aliens despite the attack. Schneider gave lectures across the country about Dulce Base. He showed audiences his mutilated hand as proof. He displayed alleged alien metals that couldn't be cut with conventional tools. He warned that the New World Order was preparing to enslave humanity with alien technology. His presentations were compelling but impossible to verify. Military records showed no massive casualties in 1979. No families reported 66 missing Secret Service agents. Schneider's engineering credentials were questionable. In January 1996, Schneider was found dead in his apartment. A rubber catheter was wrapped around his neck. The medical examiner ruled it suicide. Schneider's ex-wife disagreed. She noted that Schneider was missing research materials and that his apartment showed signs of a struggle. The cattle mutilations around Dulce peaked in the late 1970s. Rancher Edmund Gomez lost 4 prize bulls in 1 week. Each animal was drained of blood. Reproductive organs were removed. The cuts were so precise that many believed lasers were used. But portable surgical lasers didn't exist in the 1970s. The mutilations followed patterns. They clustered around certain areas. They increased during periods of unusual aerial activity. State veterinarian Howard Burgess examined dozens of carcasses. He found no evidence of predator attacks. He couldn't explain the blood drainage. He noted that scavengers avoided the mutilated animals. Gabe Valdez served as a New Mexico state police officer in Dulce for decades. He investigated hundreds of cattle mutilations. He documented unusual ground markings near carcasses. He found elevated radiation levels. He discovered that some animals had been marked with fluorescent paint, only visible under black light. Valdez believed the mutilations were connected to secret government experiments. He collected tissue samples and sent them to laboratories. The results showed unusual chemical compounds. Some samples contained synthetic materials that shouldn't exist in cattle. Valdez kept detailed files on every case. After his death in 2011, his son continued the investigation. The Archuleta Mesa dominates the landscape around Dulce. This flat-topped mountain rises 9,200 feet above sea level. Local Apache traditions consider it sacred. They say it contains doorways to other worlds. Modern stories claim the mesa houses the upper levels of Dulce Base. Witnesses report seeing lights entering and exiting the mesa. Some describe doors that open in solid rock faces. Others claim to hear machinery sounds from inside the mountain. In 1988, researchers used ground-penetrating radar on parts of the mesa. They detected large hollow spaces and what appeared to be artificial structures. The tribal council banned further surveys. Greg Valdez, Gabe's son, became a police officer like his father. He inherited thousands of documents about cattle mutilations and UFO sightings. But Greg reached different conclusions. He believed the phenomena around Dulce were connected to classified military projects, not aliens. He pointed out that Kirtland Air Force Base was only 150 miles away. Los Alamos National Laboratory was even closer. Both facilities conducted sensitive research during the Cold War. Greg suggested that cattle were being used to monitor radiation exposure from nuclear tests. The mutilations were tissue sampling operations. The UFOs were experimental aircraft. The underground tunnels beneath New Mexico have some basis in fact. The Rand Corporation published a report in 1959 proposing deep underground military bases. The report suggested using nuclear explosions to create caverns in stable rock formations. Several facilities were actually built using these techniques. The NORAD Command Center in Cheyenne Mountain is the most famous, but classified documents released decades later revealed other projects. Project Greek Island created a bunker for Congress under a West Virginia resort. Project Iceworm built a nuclear missile base under Greenland's ice sheet. If these facilities existed, why not one under Dulce? In 1995, a geological survey team working for the Department of Energy reported anomalies near Dulce. Their seismic equipment detected regular vibrations coming from underground. The vibrations were too consistent to be natural. They suggested large machinery operating at depth. The team requested permission to investigate further. Their request was denied. The project supervisor, Dr. Ellen Rodriguez, later said her team was ordered to destroy their data. She kept copies anyway. The vibrations occurred every 6 hours. They lasted exactly 42 minutes. They originated from approximately 3,000 feet below ground. John Rhodes, a researcher who spent years investigating Dulce, developed the underground reptilian hypothesis. He proposed that a species of intelligent reptiles evolved on Earth millions of years ago. When the asteroid killed the dinosaurs, these beings moved underground. They created vast tunnel systems and cities. They developed advanced technology while humans were still hunter-gatherers. Rhodes suggested that modern UFO sightings were actually these reptilians emerging from their underground world. Dulce Base was a meeting point between the surface and subterranean civilizations. Rhodes interviewed dozens of witnesses who claimed to see reptilian humanoids near cave entrances around Dulce. The Dulce Wars allegedly occurred in 1979. According to various accounts, human workers at the base attempted a rebellion against their alien overseers. They tried to free captive humans from the lower levels. The aliens responded with energy weapons. Hundreds died in the fighting. The base was temporarily shut down. When it reopened, security was increased. Human access to lower levels was restricted. This story comes primarily from Costello and Schneider. No independent evidence supports it, but believers point to increased military activity around Dulce in 1979. They note that several military personnel stationed in New Mexico went missing that year. Native American connections to the Dulce mystery run deep. The Jicarilla Apache have oral traditions about the star people who live inside mountains. These beings supposedly taught the Apache about medicine and astronomy, but they also demanded sacrifices. Children who wandered too far from camp would disappear into the mesa. Modern Apache elders refuse to discuss these stories with outsiders. They say some knowledge is dangerous. Former tribal police chief Raleigh Tafoya once said that his people had an agreement with whatever lived under the mesa. They stayed away from certain areas. In return, they were left alone. The economic impact of the Dulce stories cannot be ignored. The town has no major industries. Unemployment on the reservation exceeds 40%. But UFO tourism brings in modest revenue. The Best Western Jicarilla Inn hosts conferences about aliens and government conspiracies. Local guides offer tours to UFO hotspots. The tribal casino features alien-themed slot machines. Some residents embrace the mystery, others resent it. They say it distracts from real problems like poverty and substance abuse. They point out that focusing on imaginary aliens ignores actual government exploitation of native lands. In 2009, a team from the sci-fi channels Fact or Faked investigated Dulce Base. They interviewed witnesses and examined alleged evidence. They used thermal cameras and electromagnetic detectors around Archuleta Mesa. They found nothing conclusive. The show's hosts suggested that most Dulce stories were misidentifications or hoaxes, but they couldn't explain all the phenomena. They noted that someone was actively discouraging investigation in certain areas. Their rental vehicles were vandalized, their hotel rooms were searched, they received anonymous threats. The biological evidence around Dulce remains puzzling. Dr. Richard Hayes, a veterinary pathologist, examined tissue samples from mutilated cattle in 2012. He found that many animals had been exposed to unusually high levels of certain compounds. These included rare earth elements not naturally occurring in the area. Some cattle showed signs of radiation exposure despite no nearby nuclear facilities. Most disturbing, several animals had synthetic hormones in their systems that were only developed in classified military laboratories. Hayes submitted his findings to the FBI. They never responded. The underground water systems beneath Dulce add more mystery. The area sits above a huge underground lake that extends into Colorado. Water scientists have found unusual chemicals in the groundwater. These include industrial cleaners and strange metals. The pollution appears to come from specific spots deep underground. The Environmental Protection Agency tested the water in 2006. They found contamination but couldn't find where it came from. They said more tests were needed. Those tests never happened. In 2024, independent researcher Dr. Karen Phillips tested the water again. She found the contamination had spread, but now it contained biological material, living cells that didn't match any known organism. The cells survived in conditions that should kill any Earth-based life. They thrived in radiation levels that would destroy human tissue. Phillips tried to publish her findings. Every scientific journal rejected her paper without review. Former defense contractor Marcus Turner claims he worked on classified projects related to Dulce. In a 2018 interview, he said the base was real, but not what people imagined. It wasn't aliens conducting genetic experiments. It was humans developing biological weapons. The cattle mutilations were field tests of precision surgical devices. The UFO sightings were plasma-based holographic projections designed to create cover stories. Turner said the alien narrative was deliberately promoted to hide illegal weapons research. He provided documents to support his claims. Defense officials said the documents were forgeries. The psychological operations aspect of Dulce cannot be dismissed. Richard Doty, the Air Force agent who investigated Benowitz, admitted in 2013 that he spread disinformation about UFOs. He said it was part of a coordinated campaign to protect classified projects. He claimed that stories about underground alien bases were covers for actual military facilities. But Doty also said that some things he saw during his career couldn't be explained. He refused to elaborate. His admissions raised more questions than they answered. If the government was lying about Dulce, what were they hiding? Recent developments have added new dimensions to the Dulce mystery. In 2019, construction workers building a pipeline near the town reported finding an artificial tunnel. The tunnel was lined with a metallic material they couldn't identify. It extended beyond the range of their equipment. The construction company contacted federal authorities. The site was immediately declared restricted. The workers were required to sign non-disclosure agreements. The pipeline was rerouted. Satellite images from before and after the incident show that something large was removed from the site. Dr. Sarah Whitfield, a seismologist at the University of New Mexico, detected unusual patterns beneath Dulce in 2020. Her instruments recorded what appeared to be controlled explosions at regular intervals. The explosions occurred at depths of 5,000 to 7,000 feet. They followed geometric patterns suggesting excavation. When she published her preliminary findings, her research funding was terminated. The university said her work was outside the scope of her grant. Whitfield continued her research independently. She documented 147 underground explosions over 6 months. All occurred between midnight and 4 a.m. The wildlife around Dulce exhibits strange behaviors. Birds avoid flying over certain areas of Archuleta Mesa. Predators won't hunt in specific valleys. Deer and elk take long detours around invisible boundaries. Wildlife biologist Janet Morrison studied these patterns for 3 years. She found that animals avoided areas with specific electromagnetic signatures. These signatures didn't match any natural phenomena. They were strongest near cave entrances and abandoned mine shafts. Morrison's research permit was revoked in 2021. The stated reason was failure to follow proper protocols. Morrison said she never violated any protocols. The human cost of the Dulce mystery continues to mount. At least 12 researchers investigating the base have died under questionable circumstances. Paul Benowitz suffered a mental breakdown. Phil Schneider was found dead. Others died in car accidents, suicides, or sudden illnesses. Their deaths might be coincidental, but the pattern troubles even skeptical investigators. Former FBI agent Oliver Franklin reviewed the deaths in 2017. He found statistical anomalies that suggested external involvement. His report was never officially released. Franklin died of a heart attack 6 months later. He was 51 and had no history of heart disease. The technological signatures around Dulce defy conventional explanation. Electronic devices malfunction in certain areas. Compasses spin wildly. Radio communications are disrupted by interference that doesn't match any known sources. In 2022, a team of electrical engineers from MIT conducted measurements around Archuleta Mesa. They detected electromagnetic pulses that violated several laws of physics. The pulses appeared to originate from underground, but had characteristics suggesting they were generated in a vacuum. The team's final report concluded that either their instruments were malfunctioning or someone was using technology beyond current scientific understanding. Local law enforcement maintains careful neutrality about Dulce Base. Current tribal police chief Robert Gonzalez says his officers investigate all reported crimes, but he acknowledges that some reports are outside his jurisdiction. He mentions federal agencies that arrive quickly when certain incidents occur. He describes evidence that disappears from secured locations. He talks about witnesses who suddenly refuse to cooperate. Gonzalez keeps his own theories private. He says his job is to protect the reservation's residents, not to solve cosmic mysteries. The economic geology of the Dulce area raises questions. The region contains unusual mineral deposits. Rare earth elements occur in concentrations that shouldn't exist in this geological setting. Some minerals show isotopic ratios suggesting artificial enrichment. Mining companies have expressed interest in the area, but permits are consistently denied. Environmental impact studies are classified. Geologist Dr. Michael Patterson analyzed soil samples from around Dulce in 2023. He found microscopic spheres of metallic glass. These structures are typically only created in industrial processes or meteor impacts. There's no evidence of either near Dulce. The documentary evidence for Dulce Base remains frustratingly incomplete. Costello's papers are likely forgeries. Schneider's documents can't be verified. Government files are classified or missing. But researchers have uncovered suggestive patterns in public records. construction contracts for underground facilities in New Mexico, purchase orders for drilling equipment delivered to remote locations, personnel transfers to projects that don't officially exist, budget allocations that disappear into black programs. None of this proves Dulce Base exists, but it suggests something significant is hidden in northern New Mexico. The psychological impact on Dulce residents is real, regardless of what lies beneath their town. Children grow up hearing stories about underground aliens. Adults joke nervously about cattle mutilations. Everyone knows someone who's seen something strange. The stories shape the community's identity. They create a shared mythology that binds people together. But they also generate fear and paranoia. Residents wonder if they're being watched. They question whether their thoughts are their own. Some leave Dulce to escape the oppressive atmosphere. Others say leaving feels impossible, as if something wants them to stay. Current satellite imagery of the Dulce area shows unexplained features, heat signatures from underground sources, vehicles on roads that don't appear on maps, structures that are digitally obscured in commercial images. In 2023, an anonymous source leaked high-resolution military satellite photos of Archuleta Mesa. The images showed what appeared to be ventilation shafts and communication arrays camouflaged as natural rock formations. The images were quickly removed from the internet. The source hasn't posted since. What lies beneath Dulce, New Mexico? Is it an underground alien base where extraterrestrials conduct genetic experiments on humans? Is it a classified military facility developing biological weapons? Is it something else entirely, something our current understanding can't comprehend? The evidence points in multiple directions. The witnesses tell contradictory stories. The government denies everything while simultaneously discouraging investigation. The truth remains buried, perhaps literally, beneath the high desert of northern New Mexico. The cattle mutilations continue. The strange lights still appear over Archuleta Mesa. Electronic signals that shouldn't exist still transmit from somewhere underground. Researchers still disappear or die when they get too close to answers. The residents of Dulce still live with the knowledge that something inhabits the darkness beneath their feet. Something that watches, something that waits, something that has its own agenda. Maybe it's better not to know what lies beneath Dulce. Maybe some doors should stay closed. Maybe some questions shouldn't be answered. But humans are curious by nature. We need to explore. Someone will eventually discover what hides in those underground chambers. When that day comes, we'll learn if the truth is stranger than the stories. Until then, Dulce keeps its secrets. The mesa stands silent against the desert sky. In September 2024, something unprecedented happened. A whistleblower from Los Alamos National Laboratory contacted journalist Maria Torres. The source called himself Sigma. He claimed to have worked on a project connected to Dulce from 2015 to 2023. According to Sigma, Los Alamos had a secret tunnel that connected to whatever was under Dulce. The tunnel was built in the 1970s using nuclear explosions to melt through rock. Scientists traveled between facilities on underground trains that moved at 200 miles per hour. Sigma said he made the trip 12 times. Each time, he had to wear a radiation suit and breathing equipment, not for radiation protection, but to prevent contamination of the Dulce facility with surface bacteria. Sigma described what he saw at Dulce. 7 levels, just as Castello had claimed. But the layout was different. Level 1 was administration and security. All humans, all normal. Level 2 was laboratories studying plant and animal genetics. Level 3 was medical facilities. He saw humans in hospital beds but couldn't tell if they were patients or test subjects. Level 4 was restricted. He never gained access. Levels 5 through 7 required special clearance that he never received. But he heard rumors. Staff called the lower levels the greenhouse. They said things grew there that shouldn't exist. Hybrid organisms that combined plant, animal, and synthetic DNA. The most disturbing part of Sigma's testimony concerned the staff. Many weren't fully human. They looked human from a distance, but up close, something was wrong. Their skin had a slight green tint. Their eyes didn't blink often enough. They moved too smoothly, like dancers following choreography. They spoke English perfectly, but never used slang or made jokes. Sigma said about 30% of Dulce staff were these altered humans. They lived at the facility full-time. They never left. He wondered if they couldn't survive on the surface. Torres tried to verify Sigma's claims. She found evidence that supported parts of his story. Construction records from the 1970s showed unusual excavation projects near Los Alamos, purchase orders for specialized tunnel boring equipment, references to Project Subterrane in declassified documents, but she couldn't prove the tunnel to Dulce existed. Sigma stopped contacting her in October 2024. His encrypted email account was deleted. His phone was disconnected. Torres published what she had. The story was immediately attacked as disinformation. Fact-checkers labeled it false without investigating. Her editor received pressure to fire her. She kept her job but was moved to covering local sports. The indigenous connections to Dulce go deeper than most realize. Apache elder Joseph Yazzie, age 94, broke his silence in 2024. His grandfather had been a medicine man who knew the old stories that weren't told to outsiders. According to these traditions, the Star People had always lived inside Archuleta Mesa. They arrived before humans walked the earth. They waited and watched as life evolved on the surface. Sometimes they helped, sometimes they harvested. The Apache made an agreement with them generations ago. The people would protect the mesa from outsiders. In return, the Star People would leave the Apache alone, mostly. Yazzie said the agreement was broken in the 1940s when the government came. The military wanted to use the mesa for weapons testing. The tribal council refused. Then children started disappearing. Livestock died mysteriously. The message was clear: cooperate or suffer. The council gave in. They allowed limited access to certain areas, but the government wanted more. They brought in contractors and scientists. They built facilities. They disturbed things that should have stayed buried. The Star People were angry. That's when the real problems started. The old medicine men tried to restore balance. They performed ceremonies at sacred sites around the mesa. Some of these men never returned from their rituals. Others came back changed. They wouldn't speak about what they'd seen. They spent their remaining days drawing symbols in the sand and talking to invisible beings. Yazzie's grandfather was one of them. Before he died, he warned that the agreement was void. The Star People no longer distinguished between the government and the Apache. Everyone was now a potential threat or resource. Recent archaeological discoveries support parts of Yazzie's story. In 2024, a team from the University of Arizona found ancient ruins near Dulce. The structures were at least 10,000 years old, older than any known human settlements in the area. The architecture didn't match any known Native American styles. The stones were cut with precision that required advanced tools, but the most unusual discovery was underground. Beneath the ruins was a network of tunnels. The tunnels were lined with a glass-like substance. Analysis showed the glass was created by extreme heat that turned solid rock into liquid, then cooled it rapidly. The same process created by nuclear explosions. The team's lead archaeologist, Dr. Robert Fleming, wanted to explore the tunnels further. He was denied permission by federal authorities. The site was declared off-limits for cultural preservation, but Fleming had already taken samples. The glass contained isotopes that don't occur naturally on Earth. Some isotopes had half-lives measured in days. They should have decayed thousands of years ago, yet they were still active. Fleming concluded that either the tunnels were much newer than the ruins above them, or something was refreshing the radioactive material. He shared his findings with colleagues. 2 weeks later, he was found dead in his office. Heart attack, the coroner said. Fleming was 42, and had just passed a complete physical exam. Electronic surveillance around Dulce has intensified. Residents report drones flying over their properties at night, not commercial drones. Military-grade equipment with thermal cameras and signal interceptors. The drones focus on certain houses, always homes where people have reported unusual experiences. Sarah Begay found one of these drones crashed in her yard. She took photos before officials arrived to collect it. The drone had no identifying marks, but its memory card was still intact. She gave the card to her nephew, who worked in IT. He found thousands of images of Dulce residents, close-ups of faces, heat signatures through walls, records of cell phone conversations. The nephew copied the files before returning the card. He shared them with privacy advocates. Nothing happened, no investigation, no media coverage. The nephew's employer fired him a month later. No reason was given. The health effects on Dulce residents are becoming impossible to ignore. Cancer rates are 5 times the national average. Birth defects have increased by 300% since 2010. Children develop rare genetic conditions that doctors can't explain. Blood tests show unusual antibodies. Antibodies that seem designed to fight infections that don't exist in nature, at least not on Earth's surface. Dr. Patricia Chavez, who runs the local clinic, started documenting these cases. She found patterns. Families living closest to Archuleta Mesa were most affected. The symptoms suggested exposure to unknown pathogens or radiation, but standard tests showed nothing abnormal. Chavez sent blood samples to specialized laboratories. The results were confusing. Some samples contained synthetic proteins, others showed signs of genetic manipulation, DNA sequences that had been edited with precision beyond current medical technology. A few samples couldn't be properly analyzed. They degraded within hours of being drawn, turning into a black, tar-like substance. Chavez reported her findings to the Centers for Disease Control. They sent a team to investigate. The team spent 1 day in Dulce, collected no samples, and declared there was no health crisis. Chavez was ordered to stop her research. She refused. Her medical license is now under review. The financial aspects of the Dulce mystery are rarely discussed, but money leaves trails. Forensic accountant David Mitchell analyzed government spending in the area. He found irregularities worth billions of dollars, construction projects with no visible results, maintenance contracts for facilities that don't officially exist, payroll for thousands of employees who don't appear in any directory. The money flows through shell companies and classified budgets. It disappears into black projects with code names like Sigma 9 and Crystal Peak. Mitchell tracked some funds to specific coordinates near Dulce. Satellite images of those coordinates show empty desert, but infrared scans reveal massive heat signatures underground. Mitchell's investigation ended abruptly. His computers were seized in a federal raid. He was charged with hacking government systems. The charges were dropped, but the message was clear: stop digging or face consequences. Mitchell now lives in Mexico. He still researches Dulce from a distance. He's found evidence of similar funding patterns at other locations, sites in Nevada, Alaska, and Puerto Rico. All remote areas with reports of unusual phenomena, all receiving billions in black budget funding. Mitchell believes Dulce is part of a larger network, a network of facilities doing research that can't be done in the open. Former Dulce police officer Raymond Martinez retired in 2023 after 30 years of service. He's seen more than most. He responded to calls that don't appear in any official log. Witnesses who reported creatures that walked on 2 legs but weren't human, vehicles that disappeared into solid rock, livestock found turned inside out but still alive. Martinez kept his own records. Photos, recordings, physical evidence. He stored everything in a safe deposit box in another state. He says it's insurance. If anything happens to him, the contents will be released to the media. Martinez tells one story that haunts him. In 2019, he responded to a missing child report. 8-year-old Timothy Begay had vanished from his bedroom, no signs of forced entry, no footprints outside. The window was locked from the inside. Martinez searched the area with tracking dogs. The dogs led him to a cave entrance near the mesa. They refused to go inside. Martinez entered alone with his flashlight and weapon drawn. 20 feet inside, the cave opened into a massive chamber. The walls were smooth and curved, definitely artificial. In the center was Timothy, unconscious but alive. Around him were 12 other children, all unconscious. All reported missing over the previous 5 years. Martinez called for backup and medical support. But when the response team arrived, the cave was empty. No chamber, no children, just a shallow depression in the rock. His superiors accused him of hallucinating, but Timothy Begay was found 3 days later, walking along Highway 64. He had no memory of where he'd been. Medical examination showed he'd been fed and cared for. His blood contained traces of sedatives that don't exist in any pharmaceutical database. The other children were never found. Martinez knows what he saw. He knows those children were there. Something moved them before help arrived. Something that didn't want them recovered. The atmospheric phenomena around Dulce have intensified in 2024. Clouds form geometric patterns that meteorologists can't explain. Perfect circles, triangles, and hexagons appear in the sky. They last for hours, unaffected by wind. Sometimes, lights move between these formations. The lights pulse in synchronized patterns like a form of communication. Weather balloons launched from nearby stations are pulled off course. They're drawn toward Archuleta Mesa by forces that defy wind patterns. Some balloons disappear entirely. Their tracking signals stop abruptly at altitudes of 15,000 feet. Airline pilots report instrument malfunctions when flying over the area. Compasses spin. Altimeters give impossible readings. Radios receive transmissions in languages that linguistic experts can't identify. Some pilots have seen solid objects that don't appear on radar. Disc-shaped craft that pace commercial flights for miles before vanishing. The Federal Aviation Administration has received dozens of reports. They classify them all as weather anomalies. Pilots who insist on filing UFO reports often find their licenses under review. Most now stay silent. The geological instability around Dulce is increasing. Earthquakes have become common, not natural tremors, but rhythmic pulses from deep underground. They occur in patterns that suggest controlled detonations or excavation. Seismologists detect hollow spaces expanding beneath the surface, caverns that didn't exist in previous surveys. The growth rate is impossible without major construction, but no construction companies are working in the area. No permits have been issued. No equipment has been seen entering or leaving. In November 2024, a magnitude 4.2 earthquake shook Dulce. But it wasn't a normal quake. It pulsed in a repeating pattern. 3 short pulses, 3 long, 3 short, Morse code for SOS. The pattern repeated for 6 hours. Seismologists couldn't explain it. The epicenter was directly beneath Archuleta Mesa at a depth of 8,000 feet. After the quake, residents reported new sounds from underground: grinding, drilling, and what some described as screaming. The sounds continued for 3 days before stopping abruptly. What do you think is hidden beneath Dulce? Have you experienced anything unusual in northern New Mexico? Share your thoughts and stories in the comments below. And remember to subscribe for more investigations into places where reality itself seems negotiable.